Okay, so I'm gonna start the timer right now.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the question. I want you to design a class that supports these three operations. So the first operation is inserting a value, and you can assume that there's no duplicates allowed. So you might be given a duplicate, but you don't want to actually store the duplicate. The second thing is removing a value from this class. And where it gets interesting is I want you to be able to get a random value that is already inserted. And among the values that are inserted, I want it to be of equal probability. So just these three operations.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let me just repeat the question back to you to make sure I understood it. From what I understand, I have to create a class that essentially has three functions. One is to insert an element, second one is to remove an element, and the third one is to get a random value that is currently in the class. Is that correct?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Nice. Are these values like integers or strings or like animals? Like, are they specific something?
Yeah, you can assume that they're integers.
Okay. All right. Great. So then let me ask you this question. Are there going to be a lot of elements we're inserting, or is it just going to be a certain amount?
You can assume that it's like a reasonable amount, like less, maybe like in the terms of millions, but you shouldn't run into like any limitations like with memory or anything like that.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. Is there going to be more insertions done, or more removals done, or more get randoms done?
You can assume that they'll be like of equal quantity, like equal proportion.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you one final question before I start coding. Can I code in Python?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a class. Wow, there's auto capitalization in this Google Doc. I don't know why you guys perform your interviews in Google Docs. I think it's very stupid, but all right. So class. Okay. So let's just call this a store, class store, and we're gonna start with the constructor. Is there a way to turn off this auto capitalization, sir? This is really annoying
You can just
me.
ignore it. Yeah, you can just pretend like we can ignore the capitalization. You can just assume that it's correct.
Hey, try to ignore it. I'm just gonna say it's not very inclusive of you because I have OCD and this is pissing me off. All right, so constructor init, and this will be the constructor. So here we go. What are the variables we need here, right? We are inserting values and removing values, so we need a data structure to store these things. So let's think about what we actually can use for this. We can either use an array. So if we use an array, inserting, removing will be, okay, so it will be O of 1 on average, but since we're inserting a lot of elements, okay, we'll have to keep growing in size, and it might be useful for the get random since we have an index. Okay. Let me just think about this for 5 seconds. Okay, so if we use an array to insert these values, and we don't want duplicates, so let's say we just use an array and we insert values, removing a value would be O of n since we have to find the actual value. So let's say we use a hash map to insert these values. We can make sure that there are no duplicates, and we can make sure that inserting and removing is on average very fast, O of 1.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. The third thing we have to consider is we need to get a random value out of everything that is inserted. How to get a random value with equal probability?
Yeah, when it comes to getting random, I'll actually help you out here and just let you know that you can assume that there is a method, let's call it random.choice, I think, in Python, and it takes some list of values and it'll return you a random number with equal probability from that list.
I actually already knew that, but thank you very much for the reminder. So let me just start by initializing a hash map. Map equals to inserting
Walk through a couple like test
yeah,
cases.
for sure. Okay. Okay.
Solution works perfectly if we don't allow any duplicates. But what would happen if we did allow duplicates? Like we could have multiple 3s, multiple 4s, and in that case, the probability would still be the same. Actually, like we would still want the the random to be proportional to how many times each value has been inserted. So we don't have to change the get random. But how would you change the rest of this code to allow for duplicate values?
Okay. So in that, if that's a scenario, that means the 4 here that we implement, so there's going to be 2 4s in the array, correct? In this example I have down here.
Yep.
Okay. So that wouldn't work with the current one because in the hash map, I cannot have duplicates. So in this case, I think what comes to mind is instead of associating each value with just one value, one index, I can put an array here. And instead of counting, okay, so if I use an array, I can store multiple indices. So if I have a 4, I can have a 4 at index 1, I can have a 4 at another index. And by having that, then we just have to update the... So in that case, the remove can just delete any of these 4s, right? It can be the first 4 or the second 4 or the third 4. It doesn't really matter. And I think that's pretty much it. I can just replace the 1 with an array to keep track of the duplicates. So
yeah, that's exactly correct.
Yeah. So in the insertion, I would obviously check if it's already in the self map. I would append to the array. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, we can code that up.
Oh, okay. We code that up. All right. Thought we were just talking. All right. All right. So if that's the case, in the insertion, we're gonna start here. If value is in self map, return. So obviously we're gonna change this. Okay, so instead of using a initializing like this here, I'm gonna use collections.defaultBig, and I'm gonna put a list in here so I can just append directly to an empty list for every value. So if the value is already in the self map, I'm just gonna do self map value.append length of self.value -1, and also obviously append this to the values array. Boom. Okay, and okay, so maybe this is the only thing. Self.map.values. Okay, so actually we don't even need this. We can just do this. So we're just going to directly append it to a value in the map. If it doesn't exist, it's going to be an empty list, and this is going to be the first element associated with it. If it does exist, it's going to be the same thing, and append it to the value array. Okay, this works for the insert. Now for the removal, if the value is not in self map, return. That's fine. we have to change something regarding this swapping, because now what we're returning is an array. And self-map.value. Okay, so we're just going to return the first index, and we're going to delete this first index. So the index is going to be the first index of this value, whether it's duplicate or not. Okay, so then this is fine, will all work. We just have to change the map. So the map last value equals index. We're going to do append instead of equal. Yeah, okay. And self values.pop, delete self. Okay, so in the delete here, we have to change it. So self.map value, this is going to be an array. We don't want to delete this entire array. So what we need to do is delete the specific index inside of this array. And something we can do to make this better is use a set instead of a list. So I'll just use a set here. And we're going to, since the order doesn't matter here, I'll just use a set, and it'll be faster for insertion and deletes. So self.values append. So we're going to do add, and here we're going to do add, and self.map.value, we're going to remove this index. Move index. Okay. Okay. All right. So I think this works. Do you want me to run this through an example again?
Sure. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the same example that you
Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right, so let's start over. So self.values, we do an insertion. We're gonna go quicker here. We add into the map first. So the map will have value 3 with